Hello, and welcome to DynamicsCon. My name is Butenko, and today I will share 10 tips for PCF developers from a PCF developer. Shortly about myself. As I mentioned, my name is Butenko, and I work as a technical architect for company Hitachi Solutions America. I work with Dynamics CRM since 2008 and version 4.0, and I'm an MVP for business applications since 2010. So let's start from tip number 1. Don't reinvent the wheel. Even before opening Visual Studio or VS Code, just check what is available. And the first place to check is actually your system, because Microsoft provided a list of controls out of the box. And actually, if you want to see the whole list without trying what is it actually, you can open Microsoft documentation website. Let me jump to the browser and show what I mean. So this article contains the list of the out-of-box PCF controls that you can use. So for example, autocomplete control, multimedia, number input with plus and minus, and possibility to change the delta that will be added or subtracted from a current value when you click plus or minus. Input mask formatting that you can use for text fields, and many other controls, including wonderful calendar control and rich text editor, and for example form component that is just amazing. Let me jump back to the presentation. The second place you should check is obviously your company. Because I remember occasions when I had to build the control and actually someone inside company built exactly the same or similar control for the other company. And because our company is not the small one, we have a lot of developers, a lot of projects, and obviously a lot of controls that were built inside the company. So that's another one thing that you should check. The third one is the obvious choice. I believe anyone who even played with PCF or build one know what the PCF gallery is. But if you don't know, let's take a look on what is it. PCF gallery is the wonderful website, knowledge base of PCF controls, if you would, that is organized by Guido, MVP for business applications. And actually this wonderful website contains the list of third-party PCF controls that could be reused, and in multiple cases it even contains the links to GitHub accounts and GitHub repositories that you can check, download control and tweak it in the way you need. So if you haven't checked this resource, this will be your third go-to. And the last but not least, some controls are not available on the PCF gallery. I don't know why, maybe authors of control doesn't want to become popular, but such situations happened. Just go to the GitHub and try to find. I understand that GitHub is not the smallest website, and the search could be complicated there, but if you know what you are looking for, I'm pretty sure you will be able to find whatever you wanted to get and you wanted to implement. So go ahead and try to find what you need over there. By the way, chat is working, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions to the chat and I will try to answer it. Let's keep the pace and let's jump to the tip number 2. And it basically says, make your control easy to understand and easy to use. Luckily, it is possible to provide captions and descriptions to a particular control using the manifest files, and if your control has some limitations or requirements to a particular running environment, it would be great to provide the documentation about the particular control. Let me show you 2 controls, both actually mine, guilty as charged. So one control doesn't have a good manifest file, and the second one has it. So let's take a look and compare. So this is what you can see now. Let me zoom a bit. What you see now is the control that I have created during my videos that are available on my YouTube channel that were related to development of PCF controls, and in this case I was recreating the composite full name control, and as you may see, display name key, description key, and for all of the properties, and display name key and description key of control doesn't contain any kind of good information, and when the person will try to use it, person will have to guess which properties is used for what goal. And let me immediately jump to the other control that I was working, and not here. So this is the one, and this is the control that is part of my controls toolkit. And as you may see, this is another one, composite control, and it actually can be used to show composite address control that was available in web in the classic web client, and was not available in the UCI client for a while. So as you may see, I have populated display name key that basically says that the name of control is composite address control, and let me zoom it back to see the whole description. It basically says what's the goal of the control, and pretty much the same you can see in every single property, because every single property contains not only the name and the description key, but inside the description usually I provide the full description of what is the purpose of the particular field or property, etc., etc. Don't forget to include some kind of special requirements to control. Let's say you build the control that relies on the functionality that is available only in particular running environment. Let's say you created the control for model-driven apps and it utilizes navigation or web API. Obviously that won't work in Canvas apps or in Portal, because those namespaces are not available over there. So it should be, all that kind of gotchas should be included in the documentation. So don't forget and don't be greedy on documentation. Just make it possible and provide the documentation. As well as it would be really great to provide the documentation on how to install and configure the particular control. Let me show the example of the documentation that I created for exactly the same for composite address control. It provides the documentation on how control can be used, what is the purpose and why I decided to create the control, and how to configure it, even with screenshots if possible, with the description of how it should be configured and how it could look like when it works properly. And tip number 3, use latest and greatest. And in our case, it is React and FluentUI. There are a lot benefits using React and FluentUI, but I will give you just few of those. So why to use React? React is the wonderful thing that will allow you to change the approach using which you build your applications or PCF controls, if you would. Because with React it's possible to create some kind of components and reuse it in multiple places. Why to use FluentUI? FluentUI is actually the basic framework based on which pretty much everything that you see in Microsoft infrastructure, web application, is built of. Exchange, Outlook Online, SharePoint, Dataverse, all those interfaces are built of the FluentUI. And if you will start using FluentUI, you will just make the development faster, and instead of taking care of the UI features and controls and all that wonderful stuff, you will concentrate on the logic and on what actually your application or control is doing. Yeah, obviously FluentUI controls are not one-to-one to what to how UCI looks like at the moment. It would require a few tweaks, but those tweaks are not that complicated, and you won't spend a lot of time trying to align styles with UCI. Then you will try to repeat the same styles of the UCI interface using the pure CSS and JavaScript. Let's keep the pace and switch to tip number 4. And tip number 4 is related to the speed using which you will develop your controls. So it actually contains of 2 parts, but both should increase the delivery time of your controls. So part number 1, stop using solutions when you import your PCF controls into Dataverse instance. Don't use bug solution in it anymore, because there is a wonderful alternative, bug PCF Push. Why? Why should I? You can ask me, and I can answer that question. When you when you use the approach with solutions, you have to create the solution, you have to add the control, and only after it you can run the MS build, and as an end result you will get the solution with the control. That is wonderful, obviously, but you will have to spend the time in order to wait for all those steps to be done, and after that, anyway, you will have to import the solution into Dataverse instance, either manually through the UI or using some scripts. Why should you spend your time on it when bug PCF Push will do everything for you using only one single command, and your control is already inside the instance? Let me demonstrate on how to use back commands to push your control to your Dataverse instance. I will jump to the VS Code, and VS Code I have already opened the file, the PCF project that I was working earlier, and in order to push the control into the instance, first I have to create the authentication profile. In order to do that, I'm running the following command: pack auth create and I provide the URL to the instance I will push the control to. And I hit enter. I get the window that suggests to use one of logins I used to use, or use another one. That's the one that I used to use, so I will just choose it. It suggests to enter the password, and I provide my super secret password. It asks to approve sign-in request using two-factor authentication application, and I'm confirming it. And once I confirm it, it creates the authentication profile. The next step is basically push the control, and I do it using the pack PCF push command. And in order to do that, I have to provide the publisher prefix. And as a publisher prefix, I will use just AB. And I will hit enter. As you may see, the pack PCF launcher creates and does everything that you used to do using the pack solution need, pack project add, and so on and so on. So it just makes the process easier for you. And done. And let's take a look on the second part of this tip. Don't republish your code every time. Use fiddler instead. So what it means? Obviously, every time you apply some change to your control, you can run pack PCF push in order to push the control to the system. But to be honest, you can avoid this using the fiddler. Let me show you the scenario. So I imported the control into the system and placed it on the account form. So this is the control. Actually, it replaces the standard lookup with the dropdown that contains all the values available for the currency entity. And let's say I want to change the text, the color of the text inside this drop down. In order to do that, I go here and change color to red. What to do in order to replace the JavaScript generated JavaScript file inside Dataverse with the local version? I can use fiddler for this purpose. First, let me run fiddler. Once it is started, I will force Dataverse to reload, because I have to capture the URL that is the URL of the web resource, bundle web resource behind this PCF control. I forced the reload, and I will jump back to fiddler. I will wait until page is reloaded. And it was reloaded. Now I can use Ctrl F, and I will use something that I know that is a part of the JavaScript web resource. And in my case, it is lookup to option set. And I in search criteria, I will use just URLs only. I will ask use look for sessions, and this is the web resource that contains the code of PCF control. So I will select it, and I will go to autoresponder, and I will click add rule. I will click enable rule, and I can drop the start. So it will look for this pattern, and now I will point to the code, to the build code of the PCF control bundle web resource. It is located on D projects PCF, and after that look up to option set, out, controls, look up to option set, and bundle.js. After that I will save it. Now, in order to rebuild the control, I will jump back to Visual Studio, and instead of running PCF push, I will run npm run build. And it is completed. Now I will jump back to the Visual Studio, to the Dataverse, and I will force the reload. Now, as you may see, changes were applied to a particular control. So color is red, and I had no need to republish the control to Dataverse. And obviously that will that increase the speed of development of your controls. Tip number 5. Use versioning of the control, and don't forget about it, because it can bring you some problems. You may remember, if you used solutions before the PCF push command was added to the toolkit, you may remember that every single time you published the control to the Dataverse instance, you had to increase the version of the PCF control. Luckily, when PCF push was added, that is not required anymore when you use only one Dataverse instance, but it can bring problems if you use multiple instances, let's say development, UAT, and production. If you will try to push the control to the upstream instance that already has the control with the same version, control actually won't be updated. And I experienced such situations during the project, so just keep in mind, every single time you are done with the development and this control will be pushed to the upstream instance during the next release phase, always increase the PCF version number inside manifest file. Let me jump to the Visual Studio and show it where it is located. So once you are in the VS Code, and the place that you would want to go is control manifest input.xml, and the version of control, it can be located under the control node. So this is the version that you will have to increase. Don't forget about the chat, and feel free to ask questions if you have any of it. And without making any pauses, let's jump to the tip number 6. Tip number 6. Take care of your control size. Why it matters? Reason number 1 why it matters: because the size of the control impacts the load time of the page, and with the number of controls used on the page, and the higher or bigger size, if you would, of the control, the performance and the time during which page will be loaded could be drastically increased. And reason number 2, actually PCF control is the huge JavaScript web resource, and JavaScript web resources have the upper limit, and if the size crosses this threshold, it makes impossible for the particular web resource to be uploaded inside the Dataverse. So I will share two easy techniques using which you can decrease the size of your PCF control and make your page work faster. So tip number one, or sub-tip if you want, bring to the PCF control only what you need. Let me jump to the VS Code and let me go to record selector. Let's say I would need to use some additional element. Let's say text field, text field inside the control. I will add the text field. VS Code suggests the quick fix, and the quick fix is to import text field from module FluentUI React. And if I will use this approach, that will actually bring every single component and all the code that is not even used. So in order to decrease the size, I will have to go deeper. So under the React, I will choose lib, and under the lib, I will choose text field that actually contains my text field. This is the tip number one. And the tip number two, use production mode to build controls. This option is actually some kind of minifier of the resulting JavaScript file. In order to do it, you will have to open your PCF project file and look for the property group with the name of your project name. And in order to enable this production mode, you will have either to uncomment this PCF build mode node or create one and define the value as production. Let me jump to the presentation. And the tip number 7. Remember the features of particular running environment that you will use. At the moment, Power Apps component framework supports 3 types of different runtime environments: model-driven apps, canvas apps, and portal apps that are in preview, but anyway you can start playing with it and build controls for it. When you build controls, always think about the type of application where it will be used. Let's say you plan to build control for model-driven app and canvas app. In this case, you should not use inside your code like feature that will work only inside model-driven apps, like context.web-API and context navigation, because obviously that code and that control would work fine in model-driven app, but once it will be placed to canvas, it will blow up. And the other way around works as well. For example, canvas apps have types of properties of output that doesn't work in model-driven app. So if you want to use some output properties, think about it. Think about control, like about the control that will be used only inside canvas apps. I still have 3 tips to be shared. And without any additional pause, let's jump to the tip number 8. And it states, keep your tool belts up to date. If with the VS Code in Node.js, it will be relatively easy because both of those applications will suggest you to perform the update. If the update is available, the story with PCF CLI is slightly different. It doesn't suggest to install updates even those are available, and in order to do that you will have to run special command from the command line interface. Let me jump to the VS Code to show you that. Here is the VS Code. Let me run terminal, and in order to check if the new version available or not and install if it is available, I will run the following command: pack install latest. As you may see, this command will do everything that is required from it. It will go to NuGet, it will check Microsoft PowerUp CLI package, compare the latest version with the current installed version, and if it was already installed, it will just leave the execution. If it was not installed and the latest version is available, the newer version, is available, it will automatically install and activate the CLI for me. Tip number 9: localize your controls. Make your controls to talk the other language depending on the language that is used by a user who works inside the system. It could bring really great results in adoption, because the person who will customize and use controls will see not some maybe unknown language, but control which will talk to a person using his native tongue, and that is really wonderful possibility. In order to localize control, it would be required to create the resx files and embed it inside the control and use it inside the controls code and configuration afterwards. So what is resx file? Resx file is actually a huge and at the very beginning really scaring file that could really scare if you will look inside of it without using the notepad. But Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code have different resx editors that will make work with file easier, and you will have no problems localizing the content inside of it. And the last but not least, tip number 10: we are community. If you have problems with your PCF control or scripts or plugins or customization of Dynamics application, don't fight alone with that kind of challenge. You always if you stuck or you're feeling like you're in the dead end and you don't know where to go, I would highly recommend to visit one of 2 suggested communities and ask your question over there. Let me jump really quick to the very first Power Apps community. This is the community that I mentioned, and this forum was specifically created for people who started to adopt Power Apps component framework in early days, and they shared their concerns and challenges and problems directly with the people who is working on the PCF framework. And after PCF framework went to GA, this forum started to act as a place where different people, different developers share their experience and challenges developing PCF controls and giving the feedback to the members of the product team. And after that, it slightly evolved, and questions that were asked here were not only related to PCF framework, but people started to ask questions related to ALM, related to solutions, best practices, as you may see, Canvas apps, and so on and so on. So if you have any kind of developer or customizer question, feel free to jump here and ask your question. And the second one is Dynamic 365 community. This is the website that provides a place, if you would, where you can describe your challenge that you experience with customization or script or plugin or any kind of other development piece that you have inside your Dynamics application, and you, I have no doubt, will get an answer from a person who is working on the daily basis with an application. I used to be a constant visitor of this forum, so definitely no doubt you could see my name in some of threads over here. And as you may see, like the dozens of questions are asked and answered daily. So if you have any kind of challenges or problems, feel free to go and visit this community website, ask your question, and share your excitement. So 40 minutes, 10 tips delivered. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask your questions in the chat. Thank you for your attention.
Hello guys, I hope you like my session, and I believe I delivered 10 tips that could really help you if you are struggling with or you are just starting to master, because this PCF controls are quite fresh feature, even it is 2 years this year, but it keeps evolving, and I'm super appreciated to wonderful product team who delivered that such great possibility and such a lot of new challenges for developers that now can create wonderful visualization for their scenarios. And I don't see a lot of questions in the chat. I don't think that I delivered all the possible things. Maybe there are not a lot of questions because I don't know. I don't think that I delivered the 10 top things. So if you have any kind of questions, feel free to hit me. And if you got any kind of question, feel free to go to the forum. I'm keeping eye, and like few last months were a bit rough with my workload, so I didn't spend a lot of time with community. But now this wonderful Dynamics Con is the wonderful chance to spend the time with community and share the knowledge. I really hope that you like my session. It was like I have never delivered any kind of such session, so it was really some kind of challenge. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, feel free to put that in the chat. I see 2 messages that you liked it. I'm super appreciated if you got something from the session. I don't have a lot of questions over here, as I mentioned. But in any case, if you have any kind of questions, feel free to get in touch with me on the LinkedIn or on the Twitter. Just send me a message if you have a question, and we can, if it's something that I can help with, I will be able either to point you to a direction or help you with your challenges. and because I don't have a lot of questions, and as I mentioned, I'm super bad in monologues. I'm I have nothing else to say. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for participating in DynamicsCon. And I'm super that I see community growing. Hopefully, this COVID thing will end soon. So, and we will switch from the virtual format to the real like the into offline format, because even how I like virtual events and online events, because you have no need to travel anywhere and you can basically deliver your session from the same place you spend your like regular day life. I I have to say that I have missed the real communication and offline talking, offline hangout and all that stuff. So without any additional words, one more time, thank you for participation in my session. I hope you liked it, and see you the next time.